Hello and welcome back to another video. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. And today we are talking about the West Ham striker curse. Now, what am I talking about? Let's get into it. Make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you are new. We are nearly on 500 subscribers. We're trying to get there as soon as possible, really. So if you can make that happen, that would be great. And yeah, we're under 60 away. So hopefully you're enjoying the content, and make sure to check out the Manchester City Premier League countdown video that's coming out at 8 p.m. today. Okay, the West Ham striker curse. Now, for a very long time, West Ham has suffered with strikers. Now, even before my time. I know some fans are older than me will go back to the 2000s and possibly be on the fact that we probably haven't replaced Machiavelli and Tony Cotti. I've heard some people say that before. But I'm only going to talk about the era from 2010 onwards because that's my era. I started in 2010, really. Um, the David and Gold Sullivan era, the GSB era, and I saw the Sportsman. I shouldn't really be shouting them out, but uh, I saw their account post all the forwards that West Ham have signed since 2010. Now, for some reason, they wanted to include wingers as well. We're only going to go through the number 9 position. But ever since then, there's been multiple reasons why certain strikers have not worked out at West Ham United. Now, this might be a long video, so make sure you strap in. But there's been multiple reasons why. Some of them have just been shit. Some of them haven't fit the system. Some of them have been injury prone. Some of them just other circumstances. So let's get into it. Let's start off with the 2010 era. So Benny McCarthy was there. He was washed. That doesn't really need to say too much there. But Frederick Picquion was probably one of the first strikers I ever watched at West Ham. He was very washed. Obviously, Colton Cole was there at the time. We'll get on to Colton Cole later. But Victor Orbina was only on loan. He was actually one of the better strikers at that time. For some reason, West Ham wanted to sign about 6 strikers in the 2010-11 season, and none of them performed well. I'm assuming Robbie Keane was there as an agent, as an doing an inside job as a Tottenham prick. Demba Ba, he was there. He did well for the time being, but it wasn't enough, and he ended up going to Newcastle, and we saw the true Demba Ba. He actually hid in the boot to hide the transfer of going to West Ham, apparently. But Demba Ba was good, but we just literally got relegated, so he was too good to be there. The next season when we got promoted, it was the 11-12 season. Now, this was the first season where I started going to games, like having a season ticket going to games. I went to a handful of games in the 10-11 season, but it's my first season of going to Upton Park. So if we really look at it, in 11-12 season, John Carew, Sam Baldock. I don't even remember Brian Montenegro playing. I don't remember Joe Dixon playing. And I don't even remember the name Joe Dixon. Nicky Maynard. So the number 9s were really John Carew, who was on loan, barely played. Sam Baldock, Nicky Maynard. Them two really played a role as like squad players almost to come in for Colton Cole whenever he wasn't fit or whenever we needed someone different in a different game. Like within that season, we're under Allardyce, it was pretty much a 4-4-1-1. Vaz Taylor, Matthew Taylor on the wings, and sometimes Jack Collison, but Noble and Gary O'Neill in the pivot. And Kevin Nolan playing as a second striker just behind Colton Cole, just kind of like winning and striking the second balls and just, striking the ball in the back of the net. And that's pretty much what it was, the football that under Allardyce played. And Sam Baldock and Nicky Maynard weren't the tallest. They could strike the ball very well. They didn't really spend long at West Ham either. Nicky Maynard ended up going to Cardiff. I don't even remember where Sam Baldock ended up going. But Colton Cole was the best at holding the ball up in that team, just obviously from a striker's perspective. And Kevin Nolan was brilliant in that number 10 second striker role, just winning, being on the end of flick-ons and just winning the second balls to strike the ball in the back of the net and just getting goals from midfield, which is very important within that sort of football on that side. And we ended up getting promoted within that season, of course. Now, obviously, people like Ricardo Vazte could play there, but I don't know why you would play Ricardo Vazte, as that wouldn't have got the best out of him in that position. Now, if we go on to the next season, I don't know what I forgot about Sean Maguire. I'm pretty sure this is the same guy who's at Preston now. If I'm just gonna check on my phone quickly. Sean Maguire. Let's check Sean Maguire. Sean Maguire. Okay, it's come up with the actor. Never mind. But I think this guy's at Preston, so he hasn't really had the best career. Sean Patrick Maguire. He didn't play for us, according to Wikipedia. I don't even remember him playing for us. I remember him being there, but he played for Preston until last year. Then went to Coventry, Carlisle, and Cork. He's at Cork now. He's in Ireland. Uh, I don't even remember him playing. So I think that was one of them signings where it's probably like through an agent, knowing Sullivan and knowing Allardyce, especially. There was actually a period of time within this 2013 season and the 13-14 season, I don't remember which one it was, where we beat Tottenham 3-0. And instead of playing a striker, we actually played a box in midfield. So the deeper midfielders, I can't remember who played alongside Mark Noble. I'm going to assume again it was Gary O'Neill. But Mohamed Diame and Ravel Morrison pretty much played as like a box in midfield, like two false nines. And we ended up battering Tottenham 3-0. The problem was with that is that even though that worked for the one game, it didn't work after. We kept persisting with that tactic for the next 2 or 3 games, even though the strikers were coming back. And I'm pretty sure Colton Cole and Andy Carroll were injured. Now, Andy Carroll, let's speak on Andy Carroll quickly. Well, not quickly, but with Andy Carroll, he's one of the key members of this video because obviously he was the replacement, one of the 2 replacements for Fernando Torres at Liverpool. Him and Luis Suarez were signed on the same day, I'm pretty sure on deadline day, by Kenny Dalglish, replacing Fernando Torres after he went to Chelsea and flopped. Obviously, Luis Suarez ended up becoming one of the best forwards we would see in the Premier League. Meanwhile, Andy Carroll didn't really work out and wasn't part of the plans. So West Ham saw this opportunity to get him on loan. A lot of the players that we signed under Allardyce were either at former clubs that he was already at or players that he has had already. We signed a lot of former Bolton players, if people remember, such as Joey O'Brien, Matthew Taylor, Kevin Nolan, etc. But yeah, with Andy Carroll, it was one of them ones where we needed a striker to compete with Colton Cole anyway within that season, and he was perfect. He was perfect for that. Now, he actually did really well on the loan spell, and West Ham fans chanted for him to sign a contract. Now, the problem is with Andy Carroll that he would be good whenever he played. He would be good. He would. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say he didn't have shit games. He definitely did. I think the problem with Andy Carroll is that he didn't bring the ball down at his chest enough. That would have been better within the football we were playing. He was winning a lot of flick-ons, of course, and had a great relationship with Kevin Nolan, of course. But he needed to make the ball stick sometimes and put it on his chest, and so there was a lot of times where he didn't do that. But with him in general, it's the story that we all know. Year in, year out, he would do well, but a lot of the times he was unavailable due to the fact he was injured, and it was a lot of these injuries were clumsy due to bad health, but also because of dumb shit that would get him injured. Let's be completely honest, it was the really, really dumb shit that would get him injured. So the problem with him, he was injury prone. So that's the reason why that didn't work out. He wasn't taking care of himself, and he was injury prone. But West Ham would do this thing, especially in the era of the GSB era early on, would sign random strikers and it would never work out. Like, people forget Marwan Shamak was one of them. I remember that trim he had. It's absolutely shocking. He barely played. He barely played. We signed Wellington Paulista. We announced the signing, and God knows where Wellington Paulista is now. But that was a weird one. That was a weird signing, to say the least. Let's talk about Colton Cole now. Now, Colton Cole was actually one of the few successes. Now, he joined in the late 2000s. He stuck with West Ham throughout until the 13-14 season where he got released, and then we re-signed him on a free agent. So we released him and then we re-signed him, which was one of the most stupid things that we did as a club, because why would you release someone that you end up signing for a year, which is typical GSB. But that's exactly what Colton Cole, that's how it ended. With Colton Cole in general, He was very good when he played for the club. Like he did have bad games, but he was one of the few players that were semi successes at this club. Embraced the club very well. Embraced the club like he was even from East London. He's from West London. He was at Chelsea before, and I got really nothing against him. So cult, it ended up becoming a cult hero at the club, and yeah, you can't really fault him because he's done better than a lot of strikers, especially in 21st century at West Ham United, and most importantly, he scored in that playoff final against Blackpool. Obviously, everyone remembers the Ricardo Vaz goal, but he was the one who scored the first goal, and that can't be, um, put under the rug. But he turned up in a lot of big games as well. Turned up in a lot of big moments. So, as much as he had his chances where he missed the sitters, he also scored a lot of crucial goals. Uh, Obviously, Yanai Gordon was a youngster. Borriello was a weird signing. It was just one of them loan signings that was just like a bit like Shamak was one of them pointless loan signings. We also, I can't remember there was Nocerino, Borriello and Nocerino. I don't know what we were trying to recreate there. I don't know whether we were trying to recreate the Italian version of Mascherano and Tevez, but maybe it was the Timu version. Let's get on to the 14-15 season, where three attackers come straight to mind, who were all pretty much number nines. Mauro Zarate, Diafra Sakho, and Enner Valencia. Mauro Zarate was a good player that was, in my opinion, mistreated. Now, he ended up playing very vaguely throughout the 14-15 season and 15-16 season, but he was very talented. Could drop deeper as well, could drop behind a striker as well, but not only Bilic didn't know how to use him, Allardyce didn't know how to use him either. This was the style of football where Allardyce changed it up to a diamond. Excuse me. Changed it up to a diamond formation to play the better football and put Stuart Downing behind two strikers, with sometimes Morgan Amalfitano being one of the second strikers from midfield. And the main partnership was Enner Valencia and Diafra Sakho. But Mauro Zarate was one of the players that he had more to his game than just, what Allardyce wanted, where he would change it up every time Andy Carroll came back fit. He would change it up to just lumping the ball in the air again. So I feel like Mauro Zarate was just a lack of good coaching at the time to facilitate what he was actually good at and to get the best out of his main attributes. Now, that's why I feel sorry for someone like Enner Valencia and Diafra Sakho as well, because they benefited of each other very well. And Diafra Sakho pretty much scored in every big game in the 14-15 season. And if it wasn't for Allardyce pretty much knowing that he was going to be let go at Christmas, we might have got Europe that season. But Diafra Sakho is probably one of my favourite West Ham players because he was very underrated. And especially in the 2 seasons in the Upton Park era, he turned up and he would go on these purple patches where you think we could put him we could get more out of him. But again, lack of coaching. And Slaven Bilic, again, a man who loves to play players out of position, at times was playing him on a right wing, a right of a three, which is where his position was. He would never could play right of a three. Now, he didn't do bad there in the last game at Upton Park, but it was such a stupid tactical move. But all of this was to facilitate Andy Carroll. There was times where they could have just played as a front two, but I guess that would have fucked up the formation with Dimitri Payet in his plans or whoever. But throughout the 14-15 season especially, Sakho and Valencia played very well together, had a very good relationship. Now, the problem is a lot of people got frustrated with Enner Valencia throughout the time of 15-16 season especially. The problem is, again, Slaven Bilic playing another player out of position, playing him on a wide left. Why are you playing him on a wide left and a wide right? He's not a winger. He's a two up front man. And again, Bilic playing someone out of position. We're gonna get this isn't the last fucking forward that Bilic played out of position either. There's 2 more, but we'll get onto them later. Enner Valencia ended up leaving in the 16-17 season, ended up playing really bad against Astra Gugu. Obviously, that infamous run from Dom from West Ham Fan TV. He ended up going on loan to Everton and pretty much doing fuck all there as well, and then ended up getting sold. I think it was to Pachuca or wherever it was, or that might have been where we bought him from. But fun fact about Enner Valencia, he ran away from child support in the middle of a game by faking an injury because the police were coming to get him in the middle of an Ecuadorian game. That's such an Enner Valencia story if I've ever heard one. He also got sent off, I'm pretty sure, in this Copa America, I think. I'm not too sure, but he did well in the Qatar World Cup when he started. I do like it. I did actually like Enner Valencia. I thought he was slightly misused, to say the least. but that's how he left. With Diafra Sakho, once West Ham moved to the London Stadium, West Ham's big idea was to try and sign a big striker. Now, West Ham were linked with Lacazette and Carlos Bacca for so long. And the Carlos Bacca medical, it's 2024, we're still waiting. But also, that was pretty much what the owner was touting out towards journalists, towards Sky Sports, and towards all the insiders. West Ham did not end up getting any big striker. They ended up getting Simone Zaza on loan after he scored in a pre-season friendly in the Betway Cup for Juventus against us, and ended up signing for us. And the only time he scored at the London Stadium was against us in a pre-season friendly, and he didn't score for us. Now, the problem is with signing someone on loan is that Simone Zaza was on loan where he's never played in the Premier League before, and he's got to get a year to get used to the Premier League. And he was shit in the Euros as well. He took that shit penalty, and you're expecting him to settle in his first year when this is his only year. It's not like they were going to buy him. We all knew they weren't going to buy him, which we'll get onto that. We've pretty much talked about Zaza there. Zaza was pretty much just shit, to be honest. But Diafra Sakho, this led to the fact that Diafra Sakho was heavily out of favour, and for a year and a half, he was pretty much wishing to go to France and refusing to train and stuff, and a lot of people got onto him. But can you fucking blame him? He was mistreated by Slaven Bilic and by the club. So I don't really blame him for wanting to move, if I'm being completely honest with you. Should have just kept him as a squad player at least. But he barely got any playtime within the games at London Stadium, and he felt like he was being replaced after he was being misused in the 15-16 season as well. So that's another reason. Nene, we signed a guy called Nene. He was a forward, never played. Obviously, we signed Mikel Antonio. We're going to get onto Mikel Antonio a bit later, but he was originally signed as a right winger. A lot of people think we signed him as a right back because when he started playing, he was right wing, then quickly shifted into right back. And because they don't watch West Ham week in, week out, that's what they thought Mikel Antonio was. Nikica Jelavic was signed on loan. Didn't do much. Wasn't a bad player, though. Wasn't terrible. Emenike was a very pointless signing. I only really remember him playing in the Blackburn Cup game, and that was it. Luka Belic was a youngster. But let's get on to Mikel Antonio, because Mikel Antonio was signed within the 15-16 season. But Mikel Antonio wasn't signed as a striker. Mikel Antonio was signed as a winger, a right winger from Nottingham Forest. Now, Bilic didn't play for a very long time. His go-to players at the time was Dimitri Payet on the left, cutting in, with him and Lanzini kind of being two number 10s while Aaron Cresswell would hug the touchline. And Victor Moses on loan, who I didn't think was actually that bad, but a lot of people didn't like. Mikel Antonio comes in and doesn't play for a very long time. Made his debut in the Manchester City win, the last time we won at the Etihad, but he was never playing. And we pretty much all of us were asking ourselves, why isn't he playing? We signed this guy from the Championship, but we don't play him. He then comes into the side, gets his chance, and he scores quite a lot of goals. But there was a cup game, I'm pretty sure it was the Liverpool Cup game, where we were chasing the game at the time. And I'm pretty sure, I don't remember if it was Sam Byram or Carl Jenkinson or James Tompkins or whoever it was that was playing right back at the time. But they got taken off and another attacker came on and Bilic moved Mikel Antonio as a right back. Now, we were chasing the game. Liverpool played a lot of youngsters, but we wanted to win this FA Cup this year. And we went for this round to beat them in the FA Cup. I think it was an FA Cup replay where Bonner scored that header. And Mikel Antonio shined a lot within that right back space. So pretty much for the rest of the season from that FA Cup game, he played at right back. Now, this actually filtered through to the last home game of the season against Manchester United at the Bowling Ground, where we beat Man United, and he did score in that game, and he did actually play quite well, but you could see the guy was the right back, and we needed him to be pushed further forward. Now, Slaven Bilic didn't learn from this, and also said that he could become one of the best right backs within the Premier League at the time. And then we ended up playing three at the back sometimes. He ended up playing right wing back, and we played Chelsea in the first game of the season. Mikel Antonio had an absolute stinker. I'm pretty sure it was Hazard or Pedro or Willian that had him on toast in that game at right back. And he got taken off for Sam Byram. And from then on, Mikel Antonio did not play right back again until David Moyes came in and played him left wing back for a very long time. Obviously, Slaven Bilic gets sacked eventually in the 17-18 season. Um, Mikel Antonio uh, plays left wing back for some reason under David Moyes, pretty much playing in that 4-2-3-1-5-2-3 variation formation that we saw when David Moyes came back. He was pretty much playing in the Masawaki position. And yeah, he played him left wing back for whatever reason. And that didn't work. Bilic, obviously, Moyes doesn't get sacked, but we let him go. Pellegrini comes in. Pellegrini doesn't actually prefer Mikel Antonio. He prefers to play Chicharito or Arnautovic up front, Felipe Anderson on the left, and Yarmolenko on the right. Now, what ends up happening all the time with Mikel Antonio is that West Ham struggle. They buy new players, they struggle, they're misused or miscut or not coached properly, or they're just shit, and then they turn to Mikel Antonio to save us, and that's what he does. Now, throughout the 18-19 season, it was very clear that Mikel Antonio wasn't part of Pellegrini's plans really throughout the first team squad, and he wasn't starting a lot of games. But West Ham United finished 10th in the end. Now, in the 1920 season, West Ham United signed Sebastian Haller and a Jetty. We'll get onto them two in a minute. Now, with Mikel Antonio, he was there, but again, he wasn't playing. Now, West Ham started poorly against Man City, battering at home, and Brighton away, that 1-1 draw and stuff. Then West Ham kicked on, beating Norwich, beating Sheffield United, drawing with Sheffield United at home, beating Man United, etc. Until it got to a game against Oxford where West Ham United lost 4-0 in the cup. Then West Ham started struggling in the league. And who did they turn to? Mikel Antonio. Now, Mikel Antonio ended up getting injured, coming back, and in the Tottenham game where Mourinho's first game of the season happened, Mikel Antonio came on and scored. So pretty much to get Pellegrini out of trouble, Mikel Antonio came on. And this is where you kind of start seeing him play more of a striker role, but just now and then. Like, we knew he could play striker anyway, but now and then. He hated playing striker at the time. You can even watch his old interviews. He even said he hated playing with his back to goal. He hated it. Which is a position he ended up becoming a borderline specialist in his own unique, raw way. But throughout that 1920 season, it was the Southampton aways, it was the Chelsea aways where West Ham were dragging themselves out, and Mikel Antonio was there. Pellegrini ends up getting sacked because he's absolutely stupid. And then Mikel Antonio pretty much comes in to play as a striker role for mainly David Moyes. David Moyes comes in. And not at first, it doesn't start off at first because he still tries to work with Sebastian Haller. But throughout the lockdown season especially, Mikel Antonio comes in and does an amazing job at keeping West Ham up, and the shining moment was scoring 4 against Norwich. From then on, he was the striker at West Ham. Sebastian Haller would then get sold. We'll come on to Sebastian Haller later, and he becomes the only striker at West Ham. And ever since then, from the lockdown season onwards, Mikel Antonio has become West Ham's striker and has become a success as a West Ham player. And hopefully he retires here. And we're in a modern day now where he's playing a squad role, hopefully, whilst Nicholas Fulkirk takes the starting role. Mikel Antonio has become a cult hero, a legend, and a top goal scorer at West Ham United. He is one of the few success stories of this striker era. Of these strikers that we've gone through in this video, he is the only one really to truly succeed. Now, he's coming to the end of his career, as much as he might not like to think so. He wants to play week in, week out as well. And he will still play a key role no matter what. And I've got no faults against him. I know people don't like how much he talks on the podcast and stuff, but if you're a match-going fan, a lot of match-going fans, just like myself, and how much we love Mikel Antonio. I don't actually hear a bad word about him, just a groan and frustration sometimes, but that's it. But that's just a groan in general. Everyone likes chanting Mikel Antonio's name. Everyone loves Mikel Antonio. So, big up to Antonio. Let's get on to some of the other... We're going to go back in time as always, because this is the list that we're talking about. The 16-17 season, as I was just talking about with Simone Zaza, West Ham United were trying to sign a big striker. They ended up signing Simone Zaza and Jonathan Calleri. Jonathan Calleri did fuck all. That was it. He was only given one season as well. So he didn't really get a chance to settle in, don't get me wrong, but you can see that there was nothing there. Tony Martinez was a man who was a breakthrough prospect pretty much every year at West Ham and never got his chance and ended up becoming a squad player at Porto. Ended up being in the same youth team as Josh Cullen and Declan Rice pretty much around that time, around when they were winning youth games with Martin Samuelson and all those players. And that was it really for him. Now, Andre Ayew doesn't really count as a striker. Ashley Fletcher was also signed in that season. I was only given one season to show anything at West Ham. Scored against Manchester United, his former club at the time, in the Cup. I was never given a chance beyond that. And then went to Middlesbrough, and he's unfortunately been a journeyman ever since in his career, signing for Sunderland, Watford, etc. It's kind of been hell for him. And he was in the Sunderland Till I Die Netflix documentary as well, which is where Sunderland made a documentary about getting promoted back to the Premier League and then ended up getting relegated to League One, which is funny and sad at the same time. Getting onto the 17-18 season where people were saying West Ham had a very good window. Now, Marko Arnautovic and Javier Hernandez were signed within the summer transfer window. Marko Arnautovic, I've talked about him already on the West Ham throwback stories. So if you want to go check out the detailed version of him, go and check that out now. But he wasn't signed as a striker. He was signed as a left winger, of course, after moving from Stoke City, and Moyes converted him to a striker. Ended up getting into a bit of controversy with the fans after the whole China move and his brother being his agent trying to get involved with the whole price tag and stuff. He ended up pretending to be committed to the club and then got sold a few months later. That's pretty much it summed up. If you want to know about it in detail, go and search up GVO Marko Arnautovic and you'll find the video. Javier Hernandez was signed in 17-18 season, and for some reason Slaven Bilic wanted to use him on a wing, on the left wing at times, instead of playing a two up front with Andy Carroll, which would have been perfect at the time. Bilic ends up getting sacked, and David Moyes comes in and doesn't know how to use him either. Pretty much every time West Ham played the ball in the air, Javier Hernandez was playing. Every time West Ham played the ball on the ground, Andy Carroll was playing. The whole West Ham United era was backwards. I generally don't know how we survived relegation in that 17-18 season. I don't know how. So credit to David Moyes for even getting anything out of that. But yeah, with Javier Hernandez, it ended up carried on from an 18-19 season where we got a bit more of a shootout of him and he became a real hero against Huddersfield, where we beat Huddersfield 4-3 after coming back from 3-1 down. A comeback that doesn't really get talked about enough in the West Ham fan base. But not really, like, he showed glimpses for under Pellegrini. Again, Newcastle away was one of the games as well, but that was pretty much his best season at West Ham. And he was a poacher in the box. He didn't know the offside rule. Neither did Antonio, neither does Arnautovic. So he's one of them. But he ended up leaving in the 1920 season for the MLS, where Sullivan pretty much didn't want to have the excuse of finding a replacement. So he waited until after the English transfer window ended to sell him to the MLS. We thought we was going to get a Haller Hernandez partnership, but no. The owners have different ideas. Lucas Perez was signed in the 18-19 season, and he was a good finisher, but he didn't really do anything, to be completely honest. He was just there. It was just one of them players where he started the back end of his career and he doesn't do anything. So that was pretty much the end of that. If we're going to first team strikers, the next one, we can finally talk about Sebastian Haller. Oh, this one pissed me off. This one really pissed me off. He was signed in the 1920 season from Frankfurt, famously playing in a two-man partnership with Luka Jovic. Ends up doing really well for them, moving to West Ham United. People get onto him straight away and end up calling him shit under Pellegrini after Pellegrini didn't know how to coach and couldn't coach anything, couldn't coach 5-year-olds. And he ended up not doing well then. And David Moyes comes in, and David Moyes likes to play a specific style of play. And he didn't suit the battering ram style of play, which we'll come on to Gianluca Scamacca in a minute, because it was a similar problem then. And Mikel Antonio was favoured over Sebastian Haller, and he ended up moving to Ajax in the 2021 season in January. Ended up not being replaced. But he ended up doing well at Ajax, ended up doing well at Dortmund, recovering from cancer as well, so big up to him. And it goes to show how all these other teams that are bigger than us can get a tune out of Sebastian Haller, but we can't Ten Hag got the best out of him at Ajax. Terzic did well with him when he was at Dortmund, and done well at Frankfurt. I don't know whether Glasner was manager then, but he played up front with Jovic. So all these other managers could get the best out of him, but the managers at West Ham United couldn't. But Sebastian Haller his problem was mainly the wrong profile for the wrong style of play. Like it didn't match. It didn't match at all. And people would stereotypically look at him look at his facial expressions or look at the way we played and think that the guy was lazy because he didn't press. We didn't press as a team. But they called him lazy because he doesn't run the channel. He's not that type of player. But he didn't get any service when he was there, which is quite a big trend in this. Albi and Ajeti was just shit. We signed him and I don't know why we signed him. Simple as that. 1920 season, yes, it was his first season in the Premier League, but there was nothing in him. He ended up moving to Celtic, and I don't think he ended up doing anything at Celtic either. So that's the end of him. Let's get on to the modern day era. Now, I'm not going to talk about Nikola Vlasic and Felipe Anderson because they're wingers. Gianluca Scamacca. Oh boy, the 22-23 season, that sold me dreams. That sold me a lot of dreams. Scamacca being one of them. I've got a Scamacca shirt. The black kit in that season that came out, I got Scamacca on the back. I look really fucking stupid now. I hope Scamacca recovers from his recent ACL injury. He got an ACL injury. I think he's going to be out for like 7 to 8 months. I think it was, or 4 to 5 months. It was one of the two. But that's very unfortunate. He got injured in a pre-season friendly, and I hope he has a good career beyond that. Played really well in the Europa League final, played really well in the Europa League campaign in general. Doesn't really play well for Italy, if I'm being honest, but Scamacca was another one, just like Sebastian Haller, where he didn't suit the style of play under David Moyes. David Moyes tried changing the style of football, so a possession-based style of football, a style of play that he couldn't coach, and Scamacca was a victim of that, and he never got any service. Scamacca likes to drop deep and bring wingers in. Scamacca would have done well under Lopetegui. So wrong manager for the wrong player. And unfortunately, Moyes survived longer than Scamacca did. He ended up going straight back to Italy, as he didn't even like being in the country anyway. So we probably wouldn't have been able to keep him anyway. But people like to look at him as like he flopped because he was shit. He's not shit. He wasn't a shit player. We didn't give him the ball. He didn't link up he didn't get a chance to link up the play or anything. Because we didn't change our style of play. He wanted to coach a style of play, but ended up still being stubborn. And we didn't get that true relationship between Paquetá and Scamacca as we did in moments. And that was all because of David Moyes. So we could blame that on him. And speaking of David Moyes and stupid signings, Danny Ings. Now the problem with the motive behind this signing is the fact that Moyes signed him specifically for the fact that we needed goals. And the problem wasn't the striker aspect. You can't blame Antonio and Scamacca for that season. You blame on the fact that he tried to change the style of play, couldn't coach it, and no striker was getting any service. So Antonio was frustrated that he wasn't getting much playing time, and Scamacca was getting frustrated as he wasn't fitting in, didn't settle in. So he signed Danny Ings, and Danny Ings got fuck all. He's now on big wages, and we can't sell him because of David Moyes. Because David Moyes wanted him as a Premier League proven goal scorer, and he did fuck all because he didn't get the service either. Danny Ings likes to play in 2 up front. Whether it was at Aston Villa, under Gerrard, under Hassan Hootel at Southampton, under Deitch at Burnley, he got injured at Liverpool. He plays at 2 up front. If you want to play Danny Ings, play 2 up front. Simple as that. So, Danny Ings isn't a shit player either. He's a Premier League proven goal scorer. But he didn't fit the system either, and he was an unneeded signing. And this leaves us to the striker that we signed recently, Nicholas Fulcrook. Can Nicholas Fulcrook break the cycle of West Ham strikers and the West Ham striker curse? Can he break the curse, guys? Let me know in the comments what you think. Because as I've gone through all the strikers, they've either been shit, not fit the style of play. or it's just for other circumstances. But that is it from me. And make sure to like the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to. Social medias are in the description if you want to follow me. And the email for the inquiries. We're on the road to 500 subscribers. Let's try and get that before the end of the year. And I'll see you guys later.